I have.
Okay, you're not, it's there somewhere. We weren't talking about anything that you, just the agenda.
Yeah, it was something I was gonna do, but I don't remember what it was.
Recommended budget. That's where we'll start first. Please, let's stay till 10 o'clock.
Update on the city, Joe was asking, notice to proceed is June 5th. Speaking to the contractor, he thinks he can be done in 4 months. He needs to be on another project, he said. So he's giving him 6 months in the contract legally, but he thinks he can be out in 4 months.
Good.
So, all right, yes, sir.
That thing's right in my face.
Okay. Okay, sounds good. Yeah. All right, thank you, sir. Yeah, good evening. Y'all can tell I'm like.
You running,
How you guys doing? Good to see you.
like
Good.
Been a long day. I can get this, we good.
But we get it.
Good to see you guys.
You too.
We'll take it. Take it.
Welcome everyone to the budget work session, May 17th, 2023. Bring this meeting to order. Before we move the agenda, I'd like to amend the agenda by adding the contract approval for the property. Copy each one you have on your desk.
Motion, we amend the agenda to include the closed session.
Second.
We have a motion and a second, any discussion? All in favor? Motion passes. Budget discussion.
Thank you, Mayor. As we mentioned in last week's work session, we did not plan to have presentations to you as we've done in the past. We look at it, this is really your time to have a discussion with the board and ask questions of staff so you can be in a position to adopt the budget that you feel best meets the needs of the community. So as I mentioned last week, what we're looking for is board feedback on goals. Specifically, are the positions funded meeting the needs? Are the programs funded meeting the needs? Are the projects funded meeting the needs? And what positions, programs, or projects are not on there that we need to have a discussion about? So a real quick summary of the projects in your capital improvement budget. You've got the annual street paving project. Happy to report that our pavement condition rating is improving year by year as we put dedicated funds from both the vehicle license tag fee and the gas tax going directly towards this, so we're making progress there. We've put money in the budget to construct the signal at Old Bun and Shepherd School Road. We've put money in the budget to do the design of both the Jones Street and Pierce Proctor roundabout and the Judd at Arundel signal. And the sidewalks downtown need cleaning. These are not sidewalks where you can just go in with a power washer. The bedding of the sidewalks requires that when you steam clean them or power wash them, you have to go back in and reset the foundation. So we'll take a look as well as cleaning if there's a way that we can reset the foundation so we're not having to go through this extensive level of work every year. You'll see a number of vehicles in the fleet fund that includes replacement as well as new vehicles and fleet. Replacements will be for those vehicles of our existing personnel or our existing service fleet. New is associated with new personnel that are coming on board. Town hall reorganization, that's this town hall. Well, it's very spacious and lovely. We're bringing on more staff and we're running out of space. And so this is the funding to design the reorganization of the space we have to accommodate the staff that are projected to come on board. I've got more slides on projects, more slides on positions, and more slides on programs, but why don't we just pause here to see if the board first has any questions or comments on the recommended projects.
I'd like to have some more information on the town hall reorganization because I would like to keep the Wakeland historical field that we have back here at the end of the hallway.
I spoke to Patricia Griswold about the possibility of moving that, and she is okay with us moving it downstairs and displaying some of it down there. So I did talk to her about that.
And I think that it's not a bad idea for us to maybe enter into a conversation with Preservation Zebulon to see if they want to house some of these artifacts.
Yeah, I agree, and I spoke to Ms.
Give the
Robinson as well.
let them
To house them.
That's a good idea.
I did speak with Robinson as well. She said the same thing. She'd speak with that. We go to Griswold, but yeah.
How many offices are you planning on and where? And I don't know if you have a sketch or a drawing.
If I can find that. It'll be in the requested budget section.
I think maybe it's F26,
F?
F-26.
Yes, that's exactly where it is. So this is a very rough sketch to try to establish a scope of work of what the architect would be charged with. But what we're looking at is reorganization of space in the administration suite, reorganization of space in that Wakeland area, as well as that what we're using really now as storage space on the very back corner of this building. What's not shown on here, and when we get an architect on board, I'm going to want them to take a look at reorganization of space in the finance suite and see if we can do anything to augment anything in the planning suite. So we're really looking at everything, but for scoping purposes, for budgeted purposes, the three areas highlighted on F26, which is the second floor of Town Hall, is what we're primarily focused on. Are there any other questions or comments on the projects that are in front of the board?
I'm assuming that the Sycamore and Gannon sidewalk project has just been pushed since those fees aren't listed, and when can we expect that?
I'm going to recognize Chris Ray to give an update on that project.
Would you repeat your question? I caught the project, but I didn't get your follow-up.
The Sycamore and Gannon sidewalk project, and when that is anticipated to tick off, because we're kind of behind where we thought we were going to be as far as the start date.
Yes, ma'am. Contracts have been signed by town staff. Contracts have been delivered this week to the contractor. State contractor had to wait for us. We are expecting those back probably within a week. Typically, it takes, once the contractor gets approximately 3 weeks to get his performance and payment bonds and insurance information to get signed for us. We're looking to have a pre-construction meeting probably the first week in June, and have that notice to proceed in the second week of June.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yes, ma'am.
Don't go too far. I'm sorry.
Chris, can you speak from this podium?
Yes.
Sorry.
No problem. That's what I'm here for.
The downtown sidewalk cleaning program when you're doing that, are you going to address any of the straps that are on the trees that go into the walkway?
We can take a look at that. We can take a look at that now. We don't need to wait for the cleaning project on that. Just when the trees were new and they were little, bending, or we was trying to shape them in a certain way, we did strap them. They have been on now probably for several months, and maybe 6 months, and we can go back and take a look at if some of them can be removed, if you got some concerns.
Trip hazards.
Gotcha. And I know at the time we flagged them, and now that you say it, I don't believe the orange tapes are probably gone now, but those that do remain, we'll make sure we flag with some more orange tape.
Okay, all right, great, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Any other questions or comments on the projects before you?
It seems like a mighty big price tag on the reorganization of Town Hall. And so could you just, I know that we already talked about it a little bit, but could you paint for me what it's going to look like as far as what is currently the suite that you are in and the HR/IT suite, et cetera, and then the rooms that are housing historical material across the way?
I'll do my best. I think one thing that will help the board is while we are looking for funds to start the design of this, we're going to try to utilize the space that we have with equipment that we have. So we have some dividers already, and what we want to do is move them into the admin suite as well as the finance suite. And so that can kind of at least give you a sense of what a permanent setup would look like as far as office space. As far as the Wakeland area, I'd like to have a conversation with that organization to see if there's other places that we could put the memorabilia. And so I have less clear of an idea of what that organized space looks like. I'd rather have a conversation with that organization first. And then to get more specific, when we hire the architect, they can come back and they can provide renderings for you all to take a look at. So multi-part answer, hopefully that was helpful.
Okay, thanks.
You're welcome.
Joe?
For the renovations, the bathroom, the restrooms, will that include like the pipes and all the noise that we sometimes hear or flushing in that area?
That was not intended, but we can include that in a scope and see what kind of price we get.
Yeah, I mean, just thinking about it, and we're adding office space, which is going to add more people, more traffic into the restrooms. So I think that, if we just could at least look and see what that cost would be,
Okay.
to include that would be great.
Other comments or questions?
Any thoughts about better using the back bottom left corner, which I think you have as a large break room kitchen area? Does that need to be that large?
I think everything is on the table. I think the intention of what this building was laid out for was laid out with not knowing what we were going to look like in the future, and the future's here. So everything's on the table as far as a reevaluation. Other questions or comments? Okay, as always, if you think of something afterwards, just send me an email. The next series of projects, and these are in your recommended capital improvement plan. The projects that we have requested funding for the year to come is augmented surveillance at the police station, the money to acquire land for Fire Station 2, expansion of maintenance yards at both Public Works and Parks and Recreation, a replacement of the playground at Gill Street Park, the inclusion of dugout shades at Community Park. You saw the beginning of this last year, and we'll continue this process of putting in park amenities. So I know if you go to Zebulon Elementary, you'll see new benches as well as trash receptacles. So we'll continue to roll that out in the year ahead. Your facade grant program continues to be very popular, and so that continuing that program and bumping that up, actually. Downtown plan is just to create a master plan of all the things to include in your downtown. This could be included as part of your earmark funds for the alley activation. It could also be a way to design the curb returns, a way to slow down traffic in there. So those are examples of what could be included in the downtown plan. And then the last project where we're requesting funds is for the emergency operations plan. You have funded the creation of an emergency operations plan in the current fiscal year. We are in the short rows on that. This is for us to actually conduct exercises, tabletop exercises, as a way to put in the training. So again, I'll pause to see if there's any questions or comments on these projects.
Tell me again what we're talking about for Fire Station 2. Is this just identifying locations?
Identifying locations and then securing the property.
We're still toying around with the idea of joint space between a new park and a fire station in the same vicinity.
Not only will we remain open to that, but Wake County Public School Systems is looking for property and that we might be able to have a joint use with as well.
Okay.
Other questions or comments?
When you said up in the facade grant, what are we looking to up to?
I'd have to go back, but if you turn to your recommended capital improvement plan, it'll be the last or second to last sheet of those fold-out sheets that are 11 by 17.
Both sets or the first set?
So
E8, and it's 15,000.
Why am I seeing 40,000?
yeah, I think 40,000.
Oh, that's for the emergency operations
Right.
plan. Okay, I see. I see what we're looking at.
Facade grant, typically we've budgeted 10,000. We've got a waiting list now, and so that's why it's bumped up to 15,000. The streetscape grant is not proving as popular, so we bumped that down.
So with facade grant, I know someone's probably received an email from some citizen about how do you consider that 35, is it gonna be beneficial to them with the 35% tax credit, or how do we kind of justify that? Is it gonna balance out? How would that work?
That's really going to be a decision that each property owner has to make. And so while the historic tax credit can be very beneficial to them, it takes an awful lot of legwork. And so I think what the individual property owner is going to have to determine is, do they want to try to chase the tax credit, or do they want the more immediate facade grant? Another option available to them is they can chase the historic tax credit and get a sense of what would be an acceptable facade grant to not hurt their tax credit, and they can chase the facade grant in addition to that. So it's really, I think, going to come down to the how tolerant the property owner is to wait for money.
Thank you. And while we're on this Gill Street Park, tell me about, kind of like we talked before about there's no room for bathrooms or whatever. But one of the issues that they raised also is a park where you have kids running and doing, that they don't have access to water to drink. And so how do we kind of take a look at that while we're in that park again?
Let me see if Sheila's here. She was in transit, and oh, there she is.
Yes, so that is something that we could definitely look at if we wanted to add water fountains to that location. We'd be happy to look at that. In this process, I believe that there is water nearby. That is not something that we've been able to cost out and verify and track out what that would look like.
Right.
I do believe that there will be room within the 300,000. We would just have to do some more digging on the design side for that effort.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Any other questions on Gill Street?
One of the discussions was the possibility of expanding Gill Street Park. What is the discussion? What are your thoughts on that?
I've not been a part of conversations to expand Gill Street Park. I don't know if those were discussions before my time or just conversations I wasn't a part of.
I think it was, might have been, when we were talking about, changing the dynamics of the park. I think it's a neighborhood park now.
Yeah, so you would have to add a significant acreage to, in use to come out of the neighborhood park. The conversation about a neighborhood park is really recognizing that this is a neighborhood park and you have 4 additional neighborhood parks slated to come on board, and that the board can decide to make it your policy that you want bathrooms at all of your neighborhood parks. That's just going to add to your cost of developing parks and your operational costs, but that's a decision that the board is welcome to consider moving forward. So last we left that conversation, the board did not give direction to bring forward policy to change what is nationally the standard for neighborhood parks.
You answered my question. I thought we had to make it bigger in order to get the restrooms or whatever.
No, you don't have to make it bigger to do that. The board just would need to decide that they want to pursue a policy change in how you, I guess, the amenity and shape of parks, and then consider the impact that that's going to have on future parks and your operations.
Well, with the discussion, I can talk to my fellow commissioners as well. I am getting citizens saying now that they're bringing kids there. They don't have drinking water at the park. They're expecting to run and play on the playground, but they don't have access to water. So, and that and in the bathroom. But it is considered a neighborhood park. A lot of the people that are using it, they don't just live in the area anymore as it used to be. It used to be you could walk there. It was kids that was in the area. But it is being shared now that we're upgrading and getting more up to standard. So it may be something we want to take a look at as well. 'Cause I
And the
am
drinking
getting that.
fountain shouldn't be that expensive. And then, is it customary with like a neighborhood park to maybe put in a portable facility just to see if it's abused, how much it's used before you build brick and mortar?
Yeah, so we've got a portable there now. The challenge, there are reasons why neighborhood parks don't traditionally, like nationally, the standard is not to include restroom facilities, but there are some communities that choose to do it. Some of the reasons are very safety focused and oriented. It's something, I think a drinking fountain is a less costly thing to accomplish, and it would definitely be a great amenity to add to the park. And so I think that there is room within the existing budget for us to be able to pursue that in the design of the improved, or the playground replacement, because it is in desperate need of that.
Yeah, I don't know this. Is there a drinking fountain at Whitley Park?
Yes.
Yes.
There is, okay. That does kind of make sense. You should have a drinking fountain where kids are playing.
Absolutely.
Along the same lines, though, I mean, if we go to Little River Park, and I'm not arguing this, I'm just saying Little River Park doesn't have facilities. Now, I get that it's planned, but up until this point, you know, there are some parks that you go to and you don't have an expectation for full amenities. So I agree that a fountain is probably very well warranted.
Yeah.
But I think we might want to wait before we start putting in bathrooms in every small park that we have.
I don't think we asked for every small park, but this park has been for a long time. I personally played on that park, and I know that was an issue. Had I not been going to the church that I went to right across the street there, I don't know what I would have done. The woods would have been a local bathroom for me. But the concept is, we can take a look at where we're at now. That park is being utilized. I know one citizen that comes in on a regular to the meetings. She has 12 kids. They don't all live in that area there, that she takes to that park on a regular. That's just a small example. But that park is getting utilized a lot more now that we put the honors and put the sun little tables and stuff like
Sunshades, yeah.
sunshades and stuff like that. That park is getting utilized and it looks good. Like I said, but I know we can upgrade it and kind of go from there and give that community an aspect of a sense of belonging there.
You gave us prices before for putting in basic facilities when we were talking about Little River. Do you remember those numbers?
Not off the top of my head, but it's something I could bring back. That park, to build a structure that size, or to build that type of facility and to bring in the infrastructure, there may be some challenges that we would have to overcome that might not be within the pricing for a new park. But I can give you what our anticipated, like for a new park.
Okay.
But what, I'm just trying to think, like what we could do if you wanted to move forward with the project that's in front of you, and we could continue the conversations on restrooms, but we could also try to work out, take a look, do a study of some sort of the park use, the amount of time people are spending, what they're doing there. We could look at things like that to help study like the needs of the park.
But there's
Yeah.
a portable restroom there now.
There currently is, yes.
Yeah, I was going to ask if we could do some kind of study to see the utilization. I do definitely think that we definitely need to do a water fountain. The portable restroom just kind of made me cringe when you said that, but I understand. But I would definitely like to have more data before we agree or we even have the conversation of saying let's, because I know it will be a price tag to it. So if we could do some kind of study just to give us some more numbers on the usage, because as Quentin said earlier, you know, we used to could go to Mountain Zion and use the restroom or to someone's house when we played on that playground, but now that's not necessarily the case. So I do think it's something that, because it is becoming more utilized and there are more people moving into the community, it is something that maybe we should take a look at and make sure that we're looking at it within reason.
Yeah, absolutely.
One quick question as well. Park impact fees, is there something close enough in that vicinity to justify usage of those funds like that? I mean, is that something we can take a look at as well?
It's going to be a stretch because you can't use it for renovation. You can only use it for new. And it has to be directly tied to development. So it has to be realistic that they would utilize that space. So it's not realistic that we would pull like funds that were paid directly to the impact fee from Weaver's Pond at Gill Street Park. Where it would at Gill Street Park is if there was development within a walkable radius where it was realistic that they would be walking to that park and utilizing it.
So basically from Autumn Lakes and then from Barrington, those kids walk that sidewalk across that bridge all the time too as well, from that park to their community, to the Boys and Girls Club. So that's not realization, that's not a rational thought like that, because we are receiving park impact fees from those guys, correct?
Yeah, I don't think you're gonna see the ability to utilize recreation impact fees there. I do think, and the recreation impact fees are not intended to carry the burden of all of the park improvements. And I think you're gonna put yourself at risk in doing that. That your best bet would be to utilize general fund towards that effort. Because the recreation impact fees, you're really looking at expanding your levels of service in the sense of recreation amenities, not just bathrooms, but ball fields, playgrounds, additional acreage, a new indoor recreation facility. So I think you're going to put yourself at risk by utilizing that revenue in that way.
When you say at risk, can you kind of take down for a
Yeah,
little bit, please?
I mean, if recreation impact fees are something that We currently have the ability to charge based on state statute and our ordinance. But if there've been cases where if impact fees are misutilized, you could lose your right to charge those in the future, or you could have to pay them back. So once you've spent the money, you could have to reimburse the developer. So you need to be very careful in how you utilize those funds and don't put yourself at risk.
Is there somewhere you can email those guidelines to us so we can get a better understanding of that? To the commissioners, so we can get a better understanding of how those funds can be used?
I can
so
send,
don't be,
yeah, y'all adopted the recreation impact fee study.
Right.
And so it provides a lot of that rationale there. And so I can resend that to you.
that'd be greatly appreciated. Thank you.
Not a problem.
Let me elaborate on that at risk a little bit. So this is North Carolina is what's called a Dillon rule state, which means you can only do the things that the General Assembly says you can do. If the General Assembly is silent on it, doesn't mean you can do it. You can only do the things that they say you can do. And so there are some towns that have been granted authority by the General Assembly to charge impact fees. Zebulon is one of those communities. Some communities have lost their privilege, and the reason that they've lost their privilege, typically it comes from a developer who thinks that the fees are being charged inappropriately or aggressively, and they go to the General Assembly, and the General Assembly pulls that right away. So that's what, when Sheila says at risk, that's what she's referring to.
Okay. I just know now I'm getting citizens, new citizens are coming in, they're saying, okay, we're paying basically $6,000 a home when they purchase a home for these fees. Where are they going to? How are they being utilized? So we're getting questioned by citizens with that. So I just want to be able to really to break that down and say, these are where these funds are going when you purchase that home, basically $6,000 that they're tacking on.
Yeah, so that's in the impact fee study, is also in the master plan and in the CIP that the board just adopted for Parks and Rec. It identifies what are projects that recreation impact fees could reasonably be justified and used for. So we've got that information, we provide it to you, but I'm happy to provide it again.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions or comments on these projects?
Yes, the yard expansion, sorry, Chris. It's
The Chris or
just a Chris, sorry.
Yes, ma'am.
So you've got $400,000 to expand the yard. Could you explain a little bit what that entails?
Let me back up a step first to let you know that we are, as part of our due diligence, we are actually working with a consultant now to master plan that additional land is between us and the railroad track. So before we make any investment, we want to make sure that it works for some of our long-range planning tools. So there approximately is about 4 acres to, if you're looking at public works, to the left-hand side to the railroad tracks. Like I say, we're master planning that. I've got part of the master plan drafts started. It's more like a schematic. It basically shows where things are laid out and where our equipment will be. We're looking to phase this implementation. So we'll probably look at the first acre, acre and a half. The things that you will see in that will be clearing, grubbing, grading. We're going to change some of the entrance and the flow to public works. We're going to add in a new SCM, stormwater pond. We'll be doing grading, a maintenance yard, and basically putting in lighting and some power, and hopefully maybe a little bit of water for some wash down. So it's going to be a first step in an overall site master plan. I'll be glad to show you, share with all the commissioners what we've done to date as far as the layout for the ultimate build out, but it's the first phase. As you can, with y'all's generosity in constructing our new equipment shed, we took quite a bit of our lay down yard. We're having to store stuff off site now. Don't think that's the most ideal from a security standpoint. So we'd like to get some of those items back up on our site. It is the original 1987 layout, so there's been no expansion to the maintenance yard in over 30 years as we have grown and expanded equipment and personnel.
So we're storing equipment off site, but we're building something to store equipment in, yes?
Yes,
All
two
right.
different purposes.
So Chris, what they said, it's a totally different section that you guys utilize as well. When you cross the tracks, if you keep going past your building currently, cross the tracks on the left-hand side, what do we store there?
Oh, that's our yard waste center, and that's where I referred to, we had to temporarily move some of our equipment and store down there, some trailers, and mainly it's trailers, non-motorized stuff that is a little bit lower risk. And we have also put our containment area down there for our dirt, topsoil, ABC stone, riprap, process field and stuff like that. So ideally, we'd like to have those closer to our site, but that yard waste center is basically where those items are right now.
What's the size of that yard waste center, Chris?
The acres that we have for use are about an acre and a half, and that's currently being taken up by collection of our yard waste and leaves. It also gives us room for, our grinding and our mulch haul-out program. We also put our excess spoil pile down there from our cleanings, from our stormwater system, and any other jobs that we do. We do have in the budget that you'll see long ranges. We'll need an expansion to that site also. But I'll be glad to show you our master plan and some of the things that we are trying to accomplish. One of the things that we're ultimately, as we get bigger, we're going to need a larger salt barn, we need a new grind station. Those are things that will be coming in future phases to help us. Eventually, we're also trying to plan a fleet shop for us as Public Works takes on more and more fleet-related responsibilities as we grow and create that garage. So we're trying to lay out all those items to accomplish that task. And so we make sure the site will handle it before we make those investments.
Thank you.
So you'll get a master plan to each of us?
I'll give you the draft. It's not complete, but it gives you a concept of what we got and what we're working with.
Great.
And I'll be glad to email those out to you.
Perfect.
Yes, sir, ma'am. Anything else? All right. Thank you.
Are there any other questions or comments on these projects?
I do actually, it's not up here. When are we going to make a decision about what we're going to do with Mudcat Stadium? I realize that we are waiting on information for that, but is this something that we need to be planning for in our budget this year?
You should plan for it in the budget this year. You should plan for it in this fiscal year to receive what the price tag is going to be. You all will need to have a discussion and make a decision on how much you're willing to support. You won't see the financial impact of that decision, however, until the following fiscal year, so FY25. So it won't be a budget discussion this coming fiscal year. It'll just be a policy discussion. The fiscal decision and ramifications will come the fiscal year after that.
All right, thank you.
Other questions or comments? Okay, as I briefly went over last week, as I mentioned, we front-loaded the operating budget for you this year. We spent the spring quarterly reports to give you an idea of personnel needs. The budget that's been presented to you, it includes some of the requested personnel that have become recommended personnel. Those are the positions under the in column. Those requested personnel that did not make it through to the recommended are in the out column. And so I'll just give a brief overview of all of the positions in either column. And then again, as we did with projects, open up to any questions or comments. So in the recommended positions, a special operations sergeant, again, this is a position to oversee those special units, specifically canine and traffic control, since they typically operate on split shifts. When they operate split shifts, you have two different sergeants, and so this is a sergeant dedicated just to them. to address our wider area and address the amount of times that we are going out and staffing, that we're looking to not only reduce the number of times where we are out in the community at minimum staffing, but we're also looking to bring down our response time, so that's the addition of police officer. The 3 firefighters were positions that we anticipated as a need for this fiscal year. It was funded, those 3 positions were funded entirely a year early by Wake County, so this is those 3 positions coming up for our cost share. The crew leader and the equipment operator are in Public Works. They're primarily to address the notice of deficiency that we've received from the state of North Carolina regarding maintenance of our stormwater system and network. The athletic coordinator is to split off the athletic coordinator duties from what's combined between parks maintenance and athletics coordinator. And that's to address both the fact that our parks are getting much more used, and so we need to have dedicated attention there, as well as we've got a great increase in the number of participants in our athletic program. The community center recreation assistance, that's just to gain greater utilization of the facility that we've got down there and actually turn it into a community center than how it's operating right now, which is a recreation center. The town clerk is to pull off duties and give more bandwidth and capacity to human resources, as well as to get you the dedicated position that you all need to assist you. Planner 1 and code enforcement officer, that's both to address workload that we're seeing, but also to get us to be more proactive. So code enforcement is instead of just always being reactive, see if there's an opportunity we can be more proactive. Planner 1 has a proactive element to it as well. You are going to pass 10,000 people sometime this calendar year. Associated with that is an expansion of the extraterritorial jurisdiction. That requires a tremendous amount of work, so there's that proactive piece for the Planner 1. The IT director, this is both a capacity and a strategic situation, so we have a lot more users than can be tended to with one person. Also, with the one person that we had, the specialist, it was really a break-fix approach. We need someone who's thinking strategically about how to support our IT network in the future. And while I put in parentheses in the last position, the assistant to the manager, the budget before you actually funds an assistant town manager, I'll have a better understanding of what the needs are, whether it's an assistant to or an assistant town manager as we bring on more of the positions. So those are the recommended positions. I get the sense there's a question, so I'll pause before I talk about the positions that did not get included in the recommended budget.
I do not feel comfortable authorizing an assistant to the town manager. I very firmly believe that we need an assistant town manager. Anyone else?
I agree with that.
I agree with that too. And another thing I'm very sensitive to after doing budget work for 30 years is I don't like to fund a position for 12 months when they don't get hired for 6 months or 8 months. So I think we need some fairly firm hiring dates on these positions. So rather than funding the position for the entire 12 months, some of these we maybe fund for 6 months, because I know they're not going to be hired come July 1. And the last budget revision we did, our last meeting, we moved over $30,000 in lapsed salary and fringes, which is a large piece of money that can fund a lot of little projects that we collectively have here that we would like to get done too. They're not high priority, but there are things that we like to advance the town. So big thing is hire dates so we know how much funds to put in the salary line.
I agree with that, because I know that in past budgets, we have authorized funds for positions that just didn't get hired in that fiscal year at all. So it's not even a 6-month type thing. It was didn't actually come on board. So you're right, we can use those funds elsewhere.
For me, it's one position that I don't see up there that we're currently contracting out. Where do we stand with the Main Street coordinator? How's that working instead of us?
Well, Good question.
Yeah, I've got that on my notes too, to know what that dollar amount is.
Right, correct.
And we haven't seen the requirements yet, right?
Yeah, I think the executive board's working on that right now, and a budget, what it's going to cost to operate it for a year.
Main Street coordinator, you saying, or?
Well, not only the coordinator's salary, but if we did an MSD, what they would propose, how much money that would generate, how the money would be spent. I mean, this is brand new for us, but
Right.
we need to have an annual budget on what it's going to cost to operate Main Street.
And I need to know that that budget is going to be transitioned and what the thought of the pace of the transition to the Main Street program and, you know, with the funds that they'll be collecting and whatnot. So that we are still funding part of it, but we're not shouldering all of it.
So with that said, that position's not gonna be in this budget, or are we just gonna stay with the contract? You guys are looking to stay with the contract as we have now?
Joe or Bobby can probably answer that for us. I think it's probably buried in here in the contractual line or under contracts, professional services. So I didn't see it detailed out.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't say that either, so.
We're talking about the Main Street coordinator? It's MSP coordinator, it's in the Community Economic Development, B19 page.
And so, let's see.
Toward the bottom, the 62,000.
And I missed getting the job posting for that. Could you resend that to me, please?
That is a contracted position, so there,
It was in the past, but.
and to me, it makes sense for it to be contracted because then you don't have your insurance, you don't have your
Correct.
taxes and all that.
Correct.
And until it gets set up, it seems like we ought to just let what's going on get it started. They know what they're doing.
So let me backtrack a little bit and catch up on a few questions that were asked. Let me go back to the hire date question. When you all have the chance and you look through the individual sheets for the individual departments. So Bobby, what section is the recommended budget start in?
B.
Okay, so what I'm talking about is section B. Go through each of the departments, and under the notes column, you will see a reference made to when the anticipated start date is. And so there's a lot of fluctuation in there on when the start date is. So again, this is section B that we're looking at. That being said, there are positions that we are trying to actively bring on board. So police officer, we want them here July 1st. Police chief will actively chase people on board. That process can take 6 months. And that might be because of the process involved, but it also might be the market. So there are some positions where we have a start date of July 1st because we want to be ready to go. It may be that the market slows us down. It may be, and this is why one of the reasons I put the town clerk in there, it may be, and you'll see this when you look at the admin infographic, we are processing a lot of paperwork when we're chasing applications. So getting advertisements out takes a lot of time, but that doesn't necessarily mean that, that we are slowing things up. That said, if you all have an interest mid-year on a project and you have an interest, and we find that there's lapsed salary, then we will make that available to you. We will let you know that we've got some lapsed salary, we can move forward. So don't let the fact that a position has not started hold you up from making a mid-year request. We can make that adjustment. The budget, again, can be amended mid-year. The only thing that can't be amended is the tax rate. Before I talk about the Main Street, let me just pause to see if there's any questions or comments on what I said about delayed hirings.
Bobby, do you maintain a monthly track of lapse salary and fringes?
Not necessarily monthly. We'll say something occurs, like if something comes up, a mid-year thing, they might say, do we have any lapse salary? You know, like, obviously, most of the department directors would know, okay, I've had a vacancy for 6 months, I should have 20, 30,000 or so in lapse salary and benefits. So we might start there. I wouldn't say we necessarily keep a monthly running total or anything like that.
It should be relatively easy to do. Once we have a salary for each one of these positions with the fringes, we can kind of track that month to month and see, because that will build quickly.
Correct.
You know, from a budgetary standpoint, it's a cushion that's always there, which is good, but it's also available money for other projects.
Right. Yeah, but to elaborate on Joe's point, for instance, the clerk, you'll see in the notes, it's got clerk 12/1/23 start. For code enforcement and planner 1, or assistant town manager on B10, assistant town manager, January 1st start. Code enforcement officer, August 1st, planner 1, October 1st. So what that means is that's all that's budgeted. Like, they're not gonna start before October 1st. There's no money for it. Like Joe said, the plan is to start them as soon as possible. You know, knowing we got an October 1st start, you have some time, you know, to start, hopefully get somebody in here or start advertising July, August, and get them started. You know, like to your point, if you budget a whole year, you might not have somebody in here July 1st, so, yeah.
Because the reality is you can't hire them before you have the funds there, correct? I mean, you haven't allocated the funds.
Right.
So you can't spend what you don't have. Right.
Are there any other questions on the lapse salary question before I start talking about the Main Street coordinator? On the Main Street coordinator, the reason you don't see that under personnel is because these are new positions. The Main Street coordinator is a position that we will continue to fund, and that's already in the budget that you approved last year. So I'm only highlighting new positions. That's the reason you don't see it up there. That said, as your advisory board works through the details of 501c3 status, memorandum of understanding, associated bylaws, you'll gain more clarity on what the roles and duties of this position is. And you'll be able to be in a position to make an assessment. Is it better to keep it as a contract or bring it on as a full-time employee? Or do they become an employee of the nonprofit? There's lots of examples, but that legwork is not complete yet. When that legwork is complete, you'll be able to have a conversation about how to fund, what type of position to fund in the future.
What kind of time frame are we looking at?
It's really going to depend upon the progress that the advisory board makes. What I'm picking up is that they are a very eager, energetic group. A lot of them don't know very much about the Main Street program, and so we've brought in the Main Street staff to help get them educated up to speed. So we're spending a lot of good time right now on building the foundation. So I don't want to put a group like that that's still learning some of the basics under a particular time frame. I'd like to think that we can give you some kind of an update in 6 months about this is where we are in the process, if not sooner. But I don't want to put that group under a time frame right now.
Okay, thank you. One thing for me, while we're discussing salaries as well, some of the things in the area, I mean, in the course of true transparency, some citizens are asking like how you can see the pay chart for what the commissioners make or whatever it may be, but we don't see that for staff, for where the tax dollars are going. And they gave me the kind of equivalent, like in the military, you know, E1 at 1 year, he's making X amount of dollars. If you go to the federal government, you have a GS-12, step 1, he or she is making X amount of dollars. But for our town staff, they can't see where the funding is, their tax dollars are going. So how do we kind of explain that to a citizen?
Well, I would say a couple things. Number one, my email address is jmoore@townofzebulon D.org, anybody who emails me, I will give that information to them. I'm not saying that's what you're looking for. I'm just saying that's an answer. The other thing I think is important is context. For a community to look at the salaries that some of these positions are making and maybe compare it to what their experience is, can place things out of context. I would want to provide some context, and I think we need to have a discussion about the market rate of what our employees, particularly our department directors, are making in comparison with the market. I will tell you that we've got several department directors that are under market right now. If they were to make the decision to leave this organization, I would have to increase the salary to even be competitive to bring someone along. So what I would share is I'll share information with anyone, but I think context is important, and knowing what the comparative salaries are for those types of positions in our labor shed is going to be important.
I think, I understand what you're saying, but I think there again, the tax dollars, they have that right to know that. Emailing you would be fine, but we have everything else before us. What kind of numbers we're putting in cards, we're putting in parks, we're putting everything like that, but we left that part of that tax dollar out, where that citizen, he or she should know. Yes, that list that we received, the list that we received for staffing wise. I personally don't see, I mean, I understand the context, you're saying whatever it may be, but they're asking for that because it's a new day. These guys want to know where their tax dollars are going. Like I said, they know when we discuss basically upping the pay, and what brought that about was we discussed upping the pay for the commissioners. So that was a big thing. So now they're saying, okay, you guys are making this, what is town staff that? And I think there's something, I don't think that's private information. Most of them will Google it and think that they want to see where we're at. We created a chart when we did for as commissioners. We went through each municipality and compared the pricing of what we are getting paid. So I think they are asking for the same thing when I heard citizens say that.
And that's what I meant by context. I think it's not a full picture just to share the information of what everyone is making. It tells a bigger, broader picture about what everyone is making in comparison to their marketplace. And so just as we did with the board, we can come back and we can share not only what people are making, but provide some context as well.
So there are rules and regulations that are keeping us from sharing that information?
No, if someone emails me, I'll provide it. But what I'm saying is I'd rather have a bigger conversation, much like we had with you all, to compare your salaries with everyone else. If I just put information out there, I don't think it's going to provide the context. Someone who doesn't understand, as an example, what a planning director does is going to take a look at the salary of the planning director and go, that's a lot of money, until you compare it to what other planning directors are making. And so what I want to say is, yeah, let's be fully transparent, not only with what people are making, but what is the marketplace demanding.
And with that, let's take a 5-minute break.
Thank you. Say, we feel a bit done.
Oh, thank you. And I put it on my calendar that I would get you this stuff.
More green tea. Did you hear me? Oh, it's not. It's not on. It worked. Mayor.
You can drink on here.
Some depends in the pot.
I know.
Thank you, Mayor. So I'll pick up. Are there any questions or comments on the recommended positions in this upcoming budget? So again, those are those positions that are on the left-hand side of the screen under the in column.
So if we were to take something, or add something in, what would that consist of? Just, I mean, a procedure. Say you took one position out, we really wanted to put it back over here. What would that have to be?
What that would look like is I would ask a follow-up question to all of you. What is more important? So as an example, let's just say you wanted to add a police officer. I would ask you what on the in column is a lesser priority for you. I would get the department directors representing each of those positions that give you a little bit more flavor about the need of those positions so you can have a discussion.
Because I just see the demand that we're putting on public works guys. Those guys are going, I was up this morning riding in town at 5:30 in the morning. You got this guy, these young guys are out going hard. And we're putting a big demand on those guys because we're taking on more roads, we're taking on more communities, but yet we're not adding to them. So I know that there's a need for those guys. I'm not saying they need to move it either way, but I just want to discuss with the fellow commissioners that I see these guys out, they're starting their day at 5:30 in the morning. When I see that truck, sweep truck out 5:30 in the morning, moving like that, those guys are in high demand. I don't know what and if we can do, but.
Well, let me, hearing that, let me talk about the positions that did not make the recommendation, and so you can kind of hear my rationale, and then give you what we can do if, after my rationale gets seen out, if we still have an issue, what we can move on. So on the on what did not make the recommendation regarding Public Works is Equipment Operator 1 and Plan Reviewer / Encroachment Coordinator. So the Equipment Operator 1 would be there to assist and address primarily those stormwater issues that I talked about, as well as just the workload issues that they've got. The Plan Reviewer and Encroachment Coordinator, that's another position that Public Works requested. That position is to help with the review of development plans, as well as to the encroachment coordinator. At the end of the day, when you receive those, when you accept maintenance, as an example, for these subdivisions. Chris is going through and making sure that all the i's are dotted, all the t's are crossed, make sure that the developer understands what their expectations are, what they have to do, and by a certain date. The reason I didn't move equipment operator 1 over is right now that department has 2 vacancies. I'd really like to see what happens when those positions are filled. And then if we still have an issue, then I can come back to you all and say, we still got an issue, and I can come back to you with a possible solution. A possible solution is we've got lapsed salaries in these other positions. So I'd like to see what happens when those positions are filled. The reason I didn't move the plan reviewer encroachment coordinator over is because we have funded and we will be advertising for what I'm calling right now a town engineer. I think having a town engineer on board can not only help with the plan review process, but can help out with some other duties that Chris is overseeing, and so he can free up more time for the encroachment coordinator. So that's part of my rationale about why I did not recommend those 2 positions related to Public Works.
Thank you. Because one thing that definitely amongst my fellow commissioners is this, that I know we have guys that are on public works staff that are they're experts in a lot of things. And sometimes now what we're pulling that expert is, we're putting them out, nothing wrong with the grass cutting aspect of things, but we're taking this guy with a skill set way up here and putting him on a lawnmower. We could be doing something more so with the town in a beneficial way. That's just seeing them operate and kind of speak with some of them and kind of understand the concept. So I think it's something we need to consider with those little, not really mundane, but those easy grass cutting or whatever it may be. We do look at that in the future.
They do have currently advertising out for a mower.
Yeah, I did see that.
All right, I'm going to continue with the positions that were not recommended. So the drug investigator, right now, I would characterize our detective division as absolutely maxed out. They are very much operating in a role that is similar to with code enforcement and even IT, where it's more like a break fix. It's reactionary. And we don't, particularly when it comes to drug and gang activity, you need to get in front of the curve, so to speak. And so not having a drug investigator is going to keep us in this process of just right now break and fix. And so, and the same thing is true of the police officers. The more optimistic thing that I'll say with police officers, and I don't want to suggest that we don't ever consider police officers in the future, but right now I'm seeing our minimum staffing percentages come down, not coming down greatly, so I would put them in like the 46%. I'm hearing numbers from the chief where we're getting down to 40% in some weeks where we're really, really low, and so that's an encouraging sign, and so I felt as though we had some flexibility there. On the facility maintenance worker, what we will continue to see is in our parks facilities, the maintenance of the restrooms, as an example, they are maintained by contractors. Contractors come by on a set schedule, and they are not there for the big, massive use that comes in just inappropriately or someone has an accident. And so until we have a dedicated staff, we won't have the ability to take these big fluctuations or these accidents that occur because a contractor comes on a regular basis. So that's the con of not having that position. Project manager and executive assistant, that was really tied to the town manager. The project manager is someone to oversee not capital projects, but what I'll call more administrative projects like branding, and I'll give you an update on that in a minute. Executive assistant is just to have someone to keep a schedule and take care of some administrative assistance. My thought in not moving those over is I think the assistant or the assistant to the town manager could be things that get taken care of for those 2 duties. Again, I'd like to see what the assistant or assistant to the town manager looks like before I put forward for your consideration funding project manager or an executive assistant. So that was the rationale behind why those positions did not move forward on recommended. Again, we're open to answer any questions or take any comments you've got, and obviously the department directors are here to give you a more detailed background than I could on those positions.
What are the positions or
concerns is with our city graveyard and the maintenance of the graveyard. There's been some concerns about keeping it clean and keeping trees and fire ants and some of the graves falling in. And
We've received one complaint in recent weeks, and it was following a storm that had come through that had severely impacted our park system. We were picking up branches from all over. We had trees down. We weren't able to cut grass for a little bit of time just because of how much rain we had gotten. So it did put us a little bit behind, and that's just the nature of landscape work. I'm not aware of any graves caving in, so if there's I recently walked it and didn't see that, but if there's one in particular that you know of, please let me know so that we can take a look at that. Fire ants is going to be something that you treat them and then they move to somewhere else, and so it's something you're always going to chase. So as we're made aware and as you know we're out there, we're trying to look for them. We'll try to address them as we go. For the most part, when I've been out there, there are some things like the trash cans probably need to be updated. You've got the amenity request in the CIP, and that is an area that we've identified that we would want to update those to be a little bit larger, be a little bit more durable, make a little bit more sense for where that is. We do recognize, Joe had mentioned the facility maintenance worker. I mean, we primarily contract for the cleaning of our restrooms, but we also have one part-timer that on the days the contractors aren't here, they're cleaning our bathrooms and picking up all our trash. And we have well over 60 trash cans. I don't have an exact number, but we have a lot of trash cans throughout our park system. And so that's something we are currently looking at making operational changes to see how we can improve with what we've got. But at some point, with the increased use on our park system, the increased use in our bathrooms, we have increased litter in our parks, increased trash in our parks, that this is something we are going to have to make a transition to a full-time if we are going to be able to keep up with a high level of service that our community's used to.
And I guess what I was mentioning is the erosion around some of the graves where the dirt is beginning to fall in on some. But I mentioned it to Chris, and he took care of that one complaint, but I can see that there probably going to be some more of the same concerns with our graveyard. It's an old graveyard. But so we don't have in this budget anything dedicated as far as toward the maintenance of the graveyard.
So we currently contract an organization to do the basic landscape maintenance of the graveyard for us. So that funding is in the budget.
Thank you.
The positions for Public Works, you said that there are 2 open positions currently in Public Works. How long have those 2 positions been open? Do you know? Do we have a...
The operations manager, I would say that's been open for a year. The other is a crew leader, and that, relatively speaking, just became vacant a few months ago because someone has moved on.
Okay. So just in looking at having an open position for a year, and I don't know if we aren't, is there a reason that it's been open for a year? Are we just having a hard time bringing someone on, or?
I think there's a lot of reasons. One of the things that I'll mention is we've got a lot of work going on, and to go through a process where you put the word out, you advertise it, you're processing a lot of applications. The application process for a position like that takes a long time, as well as having the right salary, the right climate that brings in or brings forward enough applicants so you don't have to re-advertise. So I think there's a lot of factors at play. I think also in that department. They are absolutely so strapped that the idea of advertising for a position, bringing someone on has been problematic as well. And,
I'm sorry.
well, and then the other thing I was going to say is that position, the job descriptions of that position formally is not going to operate in the capacity of the job description that it is now. And so there was a time saying, yeah, we had this position, this is how it operated, but it didn't necessarily work too well. And so there was time figuring out what we needed and what that position really needed to do.
Okay. Just looking at, the great need and the strain on the employees, I would think that a position like operations manager would be like a priority if they're that, because I know that they are stretched thin. So I would think that would, maybe move up as a super priority. And then also if it's not being a priority, if it's not something that we're able to feel, I think that the plan reviewer, because we're having so many developments, we're having so many people coming before us, it may be a good opportunity to look and see, do we need to continue to advertise for the operations manager, or do we need to look at the plan reviewer because of the development? I know that they are both important positions, but if we're struggling to market the position, hire for the position, we may need to look at a different avenue. Just a thought, but wanted to bring that up.
Thank you.
So with that said, Chris,
I feel like you should just move your
just
seat
come
to
on.
right here.
Bring your chair up.
He's trying to get his steps.
so here the,
Getting his
The
steps
other
in.
thing is, walking in here gives me a chance to think about what I need to say.
get yourself together.
Yes, sir.
So with that said, we're hearing that it's a challenge. Is it that challenge to get somebody on staff there?
Let me add on to a little bit
Your
what Joe
expectation.
said about the operations manager. In all fairness, we are rewriting that job description. Part of the role of the new engineer will be assuming stormwater duties. And so myself and Joe and Lisa sat down and worked for several months trying to divide out those tasks that would be going to the engineer and laying that stormwater piece, pulling it off the operations manager from a permit compliance standpoint. The operations manager will still now be handling maintenance-related issues, but it was previously handling the permit requirements, the permit recording, all the 6 initiatives under stormwater. So that was a big piece that person was doing. And so as we were evolving that engineering role, we were pulling those pieces out. So that led to the delay. We are currently in the interview process for the ops manager, and hopefully we can come back to you in the near future with an announcement that we have hired someone.
So we working your staff overtime at all now, or a little bit?
Yes, sir. My staff's getting overtime, like you saw this morning. The sweepers, are getting paid overtime. We did have recently a individual that resigned on us, and so we're working through that. That position's been advertised. Currently, our workload picks up in the summer with the 50-plus acres of grass we have. We recently had a medical issue that we're struggling with, but it's been interesting. But the guys have pulled together and doing the best they can, and I'm really proud of the effort they put forward. So we're getting there. We do need additional help, so.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Are there any other questions or comments?
I just want to confirm, we are getting rid of it's an assistant town manager that we will be hiring, correct? Okay.
Well, I know what you want, but what I want to do is I want to see, I have in mind, and it probably will be an assistant town manager, but I want to see when the communication manager comes on, when the IT director, making the assumption that you have an IT director that you adopt, I want to get a sense of what you approve, because what you approve is really going to influence whether that's an assistant to or an assistant town manager. If you approve some of these higher level positions, then we'll need capacity to oversee. That's going to be too many direct reports to the town manager. So one of the reasons I'm keeping in the to the is because I don't want to make assumptions on the positions that you're going to budget yet.
All right, so I believe it needs to be assistant town manager, to then needs to be taken off completely. I felt that for a while. I know that we've had multiple conversations about it. I understand your reasoning. Certainly, I don't want to have the operations for day-to-day life here disrupted too much, but I really want an assistant town manager and not an assistant to the town manager.
And so the budget includes funding for an assistant town manager.
Excellent.
But I did not want to make the assumption because it will influence the roles of that position depending upon what positions you fund.
I think currently where we're at, the numbers that we're growing, we're gonna double the population in the next 5 years. We're gonna hit 10,000 as you stated. We're gonna need somebody on board now, kind of in that learning phase now, that OJT kind of learning as we grow. I think being proactive instead of reactive is gonna be beneficial to us all as a municipality.
Other comments or questions on the personnel? Okay, I'll move on to programs, and there's actually a couple of additional items that I want to talk about here. So the board expressed interest in becoming a Bee City, joining the Bee City program. I asked Sheila to reach out and discuss with other Bee cities just to get a sense of what programming they have, particularly the cost of that programming, most specifically about that integrated pest management. That's the one that had the biggest concern for me. She brought back some really good information, and I'd like to recognize her just to share some of the feedback, and then I'll talk more specifically about what I placed in the budget for y'all's consideration.
Me again. So we reached out to a variety of different communities, some that were similar in size, some that were larger. We also had a really lengthy discussion with North Carolina State as their bee campus, but they have a lot of programs around sustainability. But they also were probably provided us the best overall view of working with the Bee City program. But one thing that became increasingly obvious through the process that all of these communities were the programming and the maintenance, it was very ingrained into how they already maintain their parks, or not their parks, but their organization at large. And so it was hard for them to say, becoming Bee City cost us X number of dollars, because it's just who they have been since the 1990s or beyond. And so it's hard to be able to tell you, because I could take, just to give you an example, I took some information that the city of Raleigh gave us. So if we were to follow their plan and approved like pesticides that they had, the increase in cost just to the Parks and Rec department was an increase of $10,000. Just as a quick brush. That doesn't even look at Public Works necessarily. But it really made me think that we had to look, like, is this something that, I want to take a step back. We really need to get a good understanding of what we're doing it for and what the overall expectation of the organization at large is to be able to even develop the plans that are expected. So no, we don't need to have those plans in place to say that we want to be a Bee City, but at the same time, while we're working towards it, we need to be on the same page as where we're headed as an organization. But the other side of the conversations that I had with these organizations is that being a part of Bee City was part of a larger environmental sustainability effort. in that understanding the reason why we want to go into, why we're a part of Arbor Day and Tree City USA, why we want to be part of B-City, looking at the Parks and Rec Master Plan, and there's intentional goals and language around building sustainable parks, and that we cultivate, that we use this opportunity while we continue to pursue B-City, that we look at sustainability at large for the organization. So that's really kind of what that research we did led to, in that we can decide what the pest management plan, what the best one is to fit us. It can be very minimal, or it can be like broad strokes across an organization. That we have the opportunity to develop that, but I think we just all need to know how that looks over time and develop something that we can feasibly move towards addressing. And so I think it's a great program. I hear nothing but great things from those that are part of B-City. And I think at large, looking at just sustainability in general would be helpful. We, through this process, learned that NC State has a sustainability internship program where you could put in an application, they're due by the end of this month, to acquire an intern that would work with you over the 26-week academic calendar on specific sustainability projects. And so one of the things I pitched with the person I'm speaking with was just this effort to look at sustainability at large and just areas that we could start to work on, but also look at B-City, but even look at Tree City, because I don't think we maximize Tree City. I think that there are a lot of things that we could improve, so we're not coming across as just we're checking boxes that we're doing these things, but we're actually putting in the work and the effort to do it for the right reasons. I'm available to answer questions.
Well, let me add one thing. And so to that end, if you turn to B14, that is B as in boy, our budget, so recommended budget. B14 is the departmental budget for Parks and Recreation. Till y'all can get there.
That's
Okay.
good.
If you go to the, near the bottom, the last line item, it's called sustainability. We've recommended $5,000 to hire that intern to take a comprehensive look at the sustainability program. That will be more than enough to pay the intern. At the conclusion of that, you'll have leftover money where, if you so choose, you can join the B-City program. So that's something for you all to consider, but I wanted to add on to what Sheila just provided. That's the rationale, and then that's where money is for not only the sustainability, but if you want to take the next step to B-City, as well as if you want to modify Tree City, as well as pursue anything else that's more comprehensive as it relates to sustainability. And again, we'll take any comments or questions.
We need B14.
I need B14. That's why I couldn't find it. I don't have it.
Well, I have.
You do. You share. That's good enough.
It just seems like a lot for me for a program that I look back at
Hey,
my
wait,
research.
don't do it. I found it. It's not in.
Sorry.
No, but it's not. It's not.
Not in order.
It's me. We got it.
Sorry.
Just trying to understand, I look back at old documentation, when I look at the three charts that we had, vibrant downtown, growing smart, small town life, B-City was on there from prior to me even coming on board. Is it something now that's changed between now and then? When I look at like the different targets that we had, B-City was one of those things that's on that paperwork from way back when. Did we not think it would be as in-depth as it is now? Or is it we're giving it a different light to it?
I think it's both. I think listing something is easy. without understanding what the full cost is. So we know more about what joining B City is. So that's part of what you said. The other thing is, and so I'll elaborate on what Sheila's talking about, is I would recommend that you all think holistically about the programs that you join, so that, like if you join B City, if you join Tree City, that it's part of some comprehensive program. So you are joining these things because it fits a greater goal rather than just one offshoot, or this is something that you just heard of, because you can have disconnected efforts. So I'll give an example of what I mean by that. If you're in Tree City or you're in B City, I'd like to think your community is concerned about sustainability. It's concerned about environmental stewardship and environmental conscientiousness. At the same time, I would not say that we are very good practitioners of recycling. We don't necessarily look at how we use our environment. And so chasing the B City, while it might be laudable, chasing Tree City, while it might be laudable, seems to be disconnected from what we're doing as a whole. So again, that's a lot of words to say. I think it was easy to mention B City in the strategic plan without knowing what the full costs are. And it's easy to mention B City without having a broader conversation about sustainability. That said, the funds are budgeted there. Our recommendation is you hire the sustainability intern. At the end of the day, you adopt the budget and use the funds as you best see fit.
I mean, that, to my, when I looked at the documentation from the past, that was the citizens speaking about they wanted to be part of the BCD. So, I mean, the citizens have spoken. So it's our job to figure out what we need to do to put that in there. Hiring somebody for $5,000, it's like we're just tacking that price on and up just for, I mean, it may seem simple. I know sustainability is key, but just the citizens have spoken. They wanted that way back prior to me even coming on board. So the research I've done, I see the documentation from it. I heard the citizens saying the same thing. What's so complicated by it? So, I mean, I would love for us to break it down even more, that what it is, just really dragging that out. It seems like, I mean, the process, they've spoken.
And I'd just like to point out that while integrated pest management seems to be something that is very trigger point maybe for the manager, Apex has yet to enter into their IPM. They are in the gathering phases of where they should go and what they should do. They are still members of B City USA, so that it doesn't mean that we necessarily have to race into the program with an integrated pest management. But I also agree with what Manager Moore has said about who we are as a community. I mean, I feel like we care about being sustainable with, especially with how active the people are that support Little River Park, the people that love Tree City USA. So that kind of tells me that there's more than just a little interest, but maybe that means that we have to do more as a town and commit ourselves to stepping up our recycling game, to commit ourselves to reducing our single-use plastic game at the same time. So perhaps this is something that the sustainability intern will be able to address. And I think certainly in that $5,000, we should be able to see $200 for the application for B City USA. And if it turns out that it's something that the citizens hate or that staff can't handle, then we can revisit it.
Yeah, I totally agree. I totally agree with what you said, Commissioner Baxter. I think that when you look at the grand scheme of sustainability, we need to have, if we can bring someone in that can help us to get to that point. You know, we have recycling days, we have shredding days, we have days that we are saying that we want to be sustainable, but we're not doing it. We're doing it it as a program and not as a community change, a community effort. So maybe if we bring someone in that can help us to navigate these programs into a way of town culture, then being a part of Bee City and Tree City and everything else makes more sense now and in the long run. So I think I am for Bee City, and I think that bringing in a sustainability intern would be a great way to be proactive in moving forward.
I agree. I think that would give people more, would explain to the people. And because I still think, yes, we recycle, but I believe most of our recycle is not recycled correctly. That individual people don't know what they're doing. I mean, they're throwing away things that are not right. And so then that makes it so it doesn't get recycled, any of it. So, I mean, yeah, we need some education.
Yeah, and we talk a lot, this particular board talks a lot about educating the community on different resources, different avenues. And so at this point where we can get in front of our community and educate them on how we can be better all around, I think that's a great idea.
Because right now, it's like, well, for me, right now, it's like we're spending time, staff, you guys, we definitely know staff is pushed already. We put a lot of effort in something that seems, we can bring that, cut that time, make it shorter, the process a lot shorter, streamline it. That's what I'm looking for. And figure out what we can, get the people what they need so they understand. Because like I said, doing my research, going back, Bee City was mentioned 3 years ago. I mean, easily.
So can we maybe say that with this intern, we see a move to enter the Bee City program by the end of the first quarter of the fiscal year?
Well,
Once the intern gets on, I guess, depending on when that can happen. Or we can just do it. I mean, it's really not all that complicated.
I would make the suggestion to bring the intern on, to let the intern come up with a plan to join Bee City. But since we have the pesticide management plan and we have all these other different things that come along with Bee City, to allow the intern to know that we are going to join Bee City if that's the consensus of the board, but to allow the intern to bring it back, present it, and say, here's the application and we're going to join Bee City. Because if we're going to bring on an intern, we need to give them something to do, and that could be their first project.
Because I'm looking at the chart right now, basically population where we at, it would basically be $400 from 10,000 to basically under 20,000 people. It's basically $400 to join. So with that said, sustainability is key. So just trying to figure out where we can go from there. Just move with it.
So,
It's $400 for 10,000 to under 20,000 people. So basically, if we go as projected by the next 5 years, we'll be at 20,000. So it would be $500 basically being there.
Yeah, another recommendation, working with a lot of interns, you can get an intern who's never done this before, and you're going to have them for 26 weeks, and there's going to be a big learning curve. If you hire an intern who's already done this in another town, you could probably hire them and get it done in 6 weeks because they've already done it. Otherwise, we are becoming quasi-faculty members going through this learning curve for 26 weeks, and I've been there, and sometimes you spend more time helping the student than getting the work done. So you could reach out to that professor and see if there's a student who did this last year and see if we could hire them part-time contract and get it done.
I'm happy to reach out to them. The sense I got was the students that go through this process, this internship process through the sustainability department are typically very dedicated to sustainability, and that they have done spectacular jobs. That is the feedback I've gotten from the program. But we can definitely circle back and just ask them for alternatives. The one thing that I liked about the 26-week is that if we are really looking at this broad stroke of what does sustainability mean to our organization, it's going to take time to really do some research and understand that, as well as to start to build some of these policies that we would want, like give us a sustainable plan of how to integrate into these things. And Commissioner Baxter's right, if you join B City, you have a period of time where you can develop those plans. The one thing that I want to make sure that we understand is that while we are taking that time, that we're on the same page as what we are actually agreed. Like, are we going to the full extent, or are we taking stepping stones to get there? And so, because there's a huge operational difference in those two things. And so, and then all of the in between. And so that's where we feel like having somebody that is educated in sustainability, is surrounded by people that are very passionate about sustainability, but that could help us move in that direction. Because, I mean, Commissioner Miles, said he looks at how a lot of staff is overcapacitated, and so when I look at how do we get all of it, like how do we jump into sustainability with our current staff level, and I see this as our best option right now. I've got an employee that he himself is very passionate about sustainability, and he's bringing me ideas of things and would love the opportunity to work through the sustainability effort and with an intern from NC State. In fact, I'm going to give him a shout out because today he got accepted to be a grant recipient to become a green infrastructure certified technician, which is funded. It's a initiative from the National Parks and Recreation Association, but he was awarded that grant from North Carolina. But that's because your parks, there's so much sustainability that can be done within, like stormwater within parks, and as we develop parks. And so that just shows his interest in it, and what this could do to continue to develop our staff as well is, I think, important.
Any other questions or comments on B City or sustainability?
I would just like to make sure that we give direction.
Yeah, that's it. What do we do?
We want to move forward with B City. We also want to pursue the sustainability intern. Okay?
Agreed.
All right, the next two bullet points, and I'm going to add one to that. I'm going to be referring to page B8, which is the governing body's departmental budget.
Bullet point?
Yeah, there's only 3 bullet points, but Commissioner Laux asked me a question, and I thought of something else I need to keep you all aware of. So I'm going to be adding 2 bullet points to the ones you see up there. So let's first talk about the National League of Cities. So at the May regular meeting, Commissioner brought up the interest in joining the National League of Cities. At that point, budget is pretty much developed, so you're not going to see that. I don't see... It's not going to be a big lift or any lift at all to include that. Joining the Lisa's done some research, and it's a little under $900, so we can get that incorporated. So I'm just bringing that up to you that that's not in here now, so we would have to make that adjustment.
For NLC?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
The bigger conversation we need to have is regarding travel and training. So if you take a look at that line item, there's a few things going on there. So you'll see in the FY24 recommended column, that's a $6,000 increase. That $6,000 increase is to pay for the training associated with the clerk. If you bring on a clerk and they are not registered as a clerk, there are some certifications that they have to go through. So, Lisa, if you want to just elaborate on what those certifications are and the time frame associated with that. And then I want to talk a little bit more about travel and training, but talk about the bump that's associated with the town clerk.
All right, if you were to hire a town clerk that is not certified, the cost for certification is $4,000 to get that certification. And then that would also allows for some a conference that they would go to that they can get additional training and learning the process If you were to hire someone that is certified, then you would have conferences, and then they would have classes that they would take to continue to keep their certification. It just depends. And then as part of the $4,000 certification, they would end up with 2 certifications. One's a certified municipal clerk, which is an international certification, and North Carolina is one of the strongest in the organization for the certification of having that. So this state and the municipalities in the state have valued that. The other thing going through that would also provide them with the opportunity and the training that they would need to be a North Carolina certified municipal clerk. They need the same training to have both.
And no matter which route we go, whether they're certified or non-certified, it's still going to be about $4,000 is what I'm understanding, or did I understand incorrectly?
If they are not certified, then you would not need as much money, because then you would have to do just travel and training of conferences and additional classes.
Okay.
But not knowing what you're going to get, we budgeted on the high end, and because we just don't know.
Okay.
Is there any thought about if we do hire someone that does not have the certification and then we train them and 6 months they gone somewhere?
Well, we can always have them, can't we have them sign something that says that if they get the certification and we pay for it, that they owe us a year or 2 years?
We have done that with other positions that, they stay for 3 years, let's say, and then if you leave in less than that time frame, then you have to pay back a pro rata portion of what is left for that.
So we could certainly do that.
Yeah.
Are there any other questions or comments regarding the travel and training for the clerk?
The travel and training line increase, did that include increase for the board's travel and training? Because it seems like we've had conversations on how it did.
No, so that's the other thing we need to talk about.
Okay, sorry.
So I'll go ahead and jump into that. So if you look at the first column, it talks about the FY21 actual, and back then, the board was spending about $3,500 on travel and training. That's increased substantially, and we welcome that engagement by the board. The board has notably been engaged, heavily been engaged with the North Carolina League of Municipalities Conference, as well as the Main Street program. So that's a fantastic way to get educated on Main Street program. It's also a fantastic way to get educated on municipal issues with regard to North Carolina League of Municipalities, and in both scenarios, it's a fantastic way to get networked. And for this board that came on during COVID, when everything was shut down, getting networked is a very important thing. So we love the fact that you all are engaged. That budget, however, is being exceeded. And I've asked Lisa on a quarterly basis to give you all a balance of how you all are doing on your individual budgets. That said, I think you need to have a conversation about bumping that up if you're going to continue to participate at that level. And that will only get more pronounced if you join the National League of Cities. That is going to require a lot of travel expenses. Now, one way you may be able to mitigate that, and you can do this with all travel and training, is you may want to pick a liaison, like have a liaison and a backup go to the league, have a liaison and backup go to Main Street, have a liaison and backup go to the League of Cities. But your travel and training needs to be bumped up if you're going to continue to participate at the level that you are. It's going to have to substantially increase if you are going to participate at that same level with the National League of Cities, because that involves a lot of air travel. So I put that out there for you all to have a conversation, to provide us some feedback or questions or comments.
Okay, so the increase is from the amended budgets, goes from 14 to 20. So that's 6,000, but you said we just need 2,000 for the clerk?
You said 4.
Or 4,000 for the clerk, which
4.
leaves 2,000?
Another 2, 4,000 was the training, and the other 2 was for travel and training or conferences if they go to.
Oh, okay, all right.
Yes.
I didn't realize that those two were split out. I really think that with where we are, with how the town is growing, that it's important for us to join NLC. We've been members in the past. I think certainly, I know that WIMAGE, which is the Women in Municipal Government, that's going to be in Winston-Salem this year, so that's an easy drive, and that would add a lot of value. And then the NLC meeting is in Atlanta, and that, I mean, I'll tell you guys, that's totally drivable for me. I know that maybe it might not be for everyone, but I don't mind doing the drive. And maybe not everybody wants to go, but I think that as we are growing and talking to other members of NLC who go to these trainings, it's very important for us, especially since we're looking at this economic development issue like we've never looked at it before.
I think we were members at one time, excuse me.
No.
Yeah, I talked to Bob about it.
Yeah, we were, but you sent the mayor. You didn't send everybody, or either you could pick one. You know, I think it would have to, I think that would be something for the League of Cities. It's not that everyone goes. You pick a representative to go.
It seems to me, well, with that said, I find that when we do like conferences like the main city vision, stuff like that, we all network in a different way. We all get different information, and we come back and we kind of brainstorm and filter out what we're going to utilize. I think it's benefit. I don't know if everybody want to go, but I think we still hold that option where everybody has, if they want to go, they go. I mean,
Yeah,
that's just me.
I definitely agree. I
I
think
think
that
it's beneficial that way.
I think that we come better as a board.
Yeah, as a unit. 'cause
I
we get a
really
chance
do.
to-
I really feel like that when we go to these conferences and these trainings, we get so much good information. We have the opportunity to hear what other towns that kind of are the same size population as us, and we're able to talk, and I just feel like we come better as a group. I know for City Vision, you know, we were outside of our town limits. We were in Concord, but we were able to mingle outside of chambers, not town-related stuff, but I think that it strengthened us as a unit. I really do. So I think that we should make these things available to those that want to go. And of course, everyone won't always be able to go, but I think that it's important for us to do these things as a board.
I think to provide complete transparency, we may need to devise a way of reporting to the citizens publicly.
I like it.
Of like, what are we doing, when are we going, how much time we spending, just to let them know, you know, we're not going to these conferences for a joy trip. You know, we're going for a purpose, and that some kind of way report that out to the citizens.
I think it's an excellent
I
idea.
I like that a lot.
I mean, I love to talk to folks about what I've learned at City Vision and you know, where I can see we can take from other municipalities and you know, translate it to Zebulon. So I don't think that that's a problem at all. And I don't think
good
that we would,
practice.
I think that we should all do a little report on what we took away from
Because I know myself, I'm involved with the league, and I was on 2 different committees, and now they've asked me to possibly be on another one. So, you know, and vice president of the Mayor's Association, going to those meetings once a month, you know, so it's busy time.
Yeah.
It's busy.
So I think that where we need to maybe channel the discussion is, we're going to say, yes, let's do League of Cities. That's a $900 investment. That's going to open up the drastically reduced WIMAGE fee, as well as the NLC City Vision type thing. But then we'll have to decide what it would mean as far as the travel and conference cost. So can we find out that information, even if it's just a ballpark, so that we have an idea of how to amend the budget?
Yeah, so that's our role, is we'll come back with you next week, and we'll let you know. This is to do the things that you all have talked about. You haven't committed to it, but you definitely expressed interest. We'll let you know what the price tag is on that and what are the ramifications of that. And then you all can decide what the value of that is, how to execute it, if you want to do a liaison or just a la carte. But we'll come back to you with some scenarios.
Okay, great, thank you.
Is there any other comments or questions regarding travel and training? All right, same page, but one bullet point that I wanted to add in. You'll see in there, it's the second line item from the bottom on the same page called strategic plan grants. The way that the board has operated that program in the past is they have put applications out, and anybody who was a nonprofit and could make the case that they were furthering a goal on one of your strategic plan goals could submit something. The General Assembly dramatically changed the options on that and how and who you could award funds to. And so an example of that is if you have an affiliation with any of those organizations, you cannot give them money. So while that curtailment interrupted how grants were awarded, I think it also has opened up an opportunity for you all to consider that you actually enter into a partnership of your own initiative. And so examples of that mean, so the $5,000 that's in the budget for this coming year, if you adopt that budget, you all can consider entering into agreements or support different nonprofits of your own initiative. So if you wanted to become some kind of member of the Chamber of Commerce, you could use these funds, and you'd say, we'll give you these funds to become a member at a certain level. It's not necessarily a contract or a transactional obligation. It's just you keep doing what you're doing, and we're going to join at this level. Another example of that, you have East Wake Education Foundation. They are utilizing your community center, and that's a way to bring their program into the community. There might be some things that we have to have discussion about if there's representation from this board on that board, but the end result is you use these funds as a way to fund the partnerships that you initiate rather than just putting it out to the community. So again, we'll open that up for any questions or comments or feedback that you have on that idea.
So the new rule says that if we are affiliated with the organization, we can't give them money.
Correct. Long and short of it, yes.
We being who?
So would that be a problem then, because Jessica works at the chamber, or what would that mean?
I don't work at the chamber.
Oh, you're not there anymore?
No, but
Okay.
I do serve on the board for East Wake Education Foundation.
So you would have to, if you were interested in entering a partnership with that nonprofit, you would have to resign the East Wake Education Foundation position.
Okay.
And so what other types of organizations, you gave the chamber as an example, are there any other ones at that level that you can think of?
Not offhand. I think that's really, when I say the word initiative, that's really on you all, things that you think are a good partnership. I threw out the chamber because we have partnered with them. It was more transactional, it was more specific. But even if you don't have that formal partnership, they are doing things that I think further or advance upon goals that you've got. So I threw that out as an example. The same thing with East Wake Education Foundation. So those are examples of why I threw that out as examples. But really, I think it would be incumbent upon the board to say, this is who we want to partner with and this is who we want to support.
For me, I'm getting some feedback from citizens saying that, okay, like Miss Zebulon, they look forward to those funds. I mean, that was funds that they were able to utilize in a positive way to impact the community. That's just one organization that kind of come to mind that I got feedback from. So we can no longer give to those guys. They really like that way.
Who was that?
I'm sorry?
What was that?
Miss Zebulon was one of the organizations that we used to give funds to annually. So, just small things like that, so. Don't know.
It doesn't necessarily mean that you can't give funds. It's just that the process is, it's not just come up and ask and give money anymore. It's much more constrained than that. And if Ms. Zebulon is a partnership that furthers, advances upon a goal that you've got, that's in your strategic plan, and you can check the boxes to make sure that you don't have a conflict of interest, like a member of this board is not on their board, then I still think that's an option available to you. The difference here is that you are initiating the award of grants rather than just opening up to the community, and then you get into this place where you're not wanting to turn people away, and so you're dividing grants into such small amounts that they really don't mean anything, that you're giving a more substantial amount of your own choosing.
So then, if we were to do something, and I'm going to use Miss Zebulon because I know that we allowed that organization to use the municipal center for one of the events. That could be a way that we support them, correct? Even though it has a monetary value associated with it if we were to just rent it out normally?
You could do that for that particular type of scenario. If it's like a special event, they could come before you and utilize your special event process.
And that would be a way that we could support Miss Zebulon without necessarily writing a check.
Okay. I just know that's stuff I heard. They look forward to those funds. Not only them, the other people that was receiving, those small nonprofits. And you may say we chop it up, but $500 to a nonprofit that has zero in that bank account is a lot where they can help the community. So, we may chop it up, but we're giving them something to benefit the community.
So maybe it would be a good idea, because we've been talking about how waiving all of these fees for different organizations. So would it be something that we could think about or look at to utilize this line as a way to absorb some of the fees that we've been waiving for some of the nonprofits?
Like saying that we're going to only do $5,000 worth of fee waivers.
Does that make
I
sense?
think
Because we're kind of paying.
I think it's a really good idea.
You get what I'm saying?
I
I
do.
would just waive $200 or for angel prints. So instead of,
We'd have $4,800. And then I think we would be making more deliberate decisions instead of someone coming before us and saying, well, I want you to waive $10,000. We can say, well, we have $4,000 left for the year, and we've decided that you get two.
and it could be
2,000 waived.
our nonprofit line. So we could only waive fees for nonprofits from that line.
But then you get caught in a situation, how are you going to decide who gets that too? First come, first serve, is that what you're stating?
That's where we have to be more
I think initially,
about how we're waiving.
I think initially where we were at with the waiving was we were planting seeds because we want that partnership. But I don't know if we're there yet because we're only 2 years, really kind of like with that 2 years in, waiving fees, different things like that. We're just getting started on that. If we put ourselves on a budget now, I can see in the future being there. But right now where we're at, I don't know if it's beneficial because we have a lot of nonprofits that are coming to us that are just getting established with new citizens that are having Angel Print being one. So we go to boxing them in now some of those events that they're having that are bringing citizens in, they may not be able to host that because I don't know if their budget is where it needs to be to sustain this.
But we also don't have a policy that says that we are going to absolutely allow fee waivers if you just come in and say, I'm a new nonprofit, so I'm going to assume that you're going to waive fees. There are some criteria, and one of those criteria that we've been a little bit loosey-goosey with how we've adhered to it is, that you've established yourself in the community. Now, with Angel Prints, I think that they are going to establish themselves in the community. I think they've made good headway. But, I don't think that we should be waiving fees for every single nonprofit that comes before us. It's not our responsibility to fund their nonprofit and get it off the ground.
Right, nonprofits can raise money with raffles, bake sales. There are all kinds of ways to generate funds as opposed to asking the city to go ahead and waive fees for an event. They need to generate their own revenue. And if it's a good organization, people will honor it, buy raffle tickets, support it.
And if it's something that we think furthers our goals, then we can do some sort of fee waiver. I really like that idea, Jessica. I think it's a good idea.
And that way we budget the amount in a
Right.
year that we will waive.
Could we get some data on how much money we have waived in fees for nonprofits over the last 2 years to ensure that if we say that this is something we want to look at, that $5,000 is, it might be way more than what we've waived over the year. We don't know. You
Yeah,
know,
we
so
may,
can
may put a
just see-
maximum amount any group could get too.
And so this leads me to address what the manager led with, which was a Chamber of Commerce. I do think that we should consider joining at some level and having some kind of conversation with the chamber as to what a supportive level would be without us needing full-blown membership, because we truly are two unique, business styles. And I don't think that we need a membership tier that we're adhering to, but I definitely think that we should join in some capacity, some kind of good faith membership. Thoughts?
No, I think, I mean, I've been saying that for months, so, yes,
Yeah, we should be a member of the chamber.
member.
Okay. I mean, we have been in the past, and so I think that, is that a conversation that we can task you guys with, to reaching out to John and those folks to start that conversation?
I think we can expedite it. If I'm making some assumptions, but let's say you adopt this budget. You all have been handed individually what the membership amounts are. If after this budget is adopted, one of you wants to make a motion, you have a supportive second, and there's a majority support, you can just go ahead and say, we make the motion to join the chamber at this level, costing it this, and we'll charge it to this line item.
Okay.
I like it.
Does that sound good, guys? Okay.
We used to support the chamber in the past. Joe.
Yeah, some of this precedes me, so don't take a lot of stock in the first part of what I'm saying. The first part of what I'm saying is what I have understood is that we gave them $1,000 to support the parade. And that's really hearsay.
No, that's true.
Yeah, okay, so I got lucky. All right. What we did subsequent to that, we had a much more formal arrangement where we entered into a contract and we specified transactional things. You do this, 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 and this. And they were primarily focused on economic development. And the chamber executive director would come on a quarterly basis, report out on the progress, and then at the conclusion of that report out, the board would release a quarter of what the total annual appropriation was. I think it was a good program, a good partnership for where we were in economic development at the time. But given their capacity as an organization, that's not something that was sustainable long-term.
And now we have an economic developer.
Yes. They do have an economic development component. They tend to, they're a membership organization. They tend to business members of that organization. So I still think that there is an economic development thread there, but it's not formalized and transactional like it once was. So I rambled quite a bit. Did that answer your question, Commissioner Miles?
It kind of does. Thank you.
We gave the chamber $1,000 for the parade, or were we paying for entries for us, or did we just donate?
Say that again?
We gave the chamber $1,000 for the parade, or were we paying for our entries?
No, we gave them $1,000.
Okay, just
'Cause,
making sure.
okay, we're saying waiving those fees, stuff like that. If they, think about what we said, we're about to put ourselves on, okay, Christmas parade example. Think how much money we put in staffing, waiving for those guys this year, from police to fire to public works. So we limit ourselves to $5,000. So now, how will that work with that? You put that cap of $5,000, how would that work for their chamber Christmas parade? We spent $5,000. We gave them more than $5,000 for the Christmas parade. So pretty much the only thing we can waive, quote unquote, is
Well, hopefully we'll see that in the report they're going to prepare for us on waived fees, because we need to kind of have that somehow accounted for, because we did pay for all that.
because, I mean, you're gonna, like I said, you're gonna put yourself in a situation where you're gonna be figuring out, like, okay, because there was a big fee, because they had a donation thing. I know GSK gave a big amount of money. It was like, no, the town of Zebulon didn't give anything, but we gave staffing, we gave police, we gave fire, we gave public works. We did all that, so it was a big chunk of change that we gave, so.
But I think that this is outside of it, this is just like, if we wanted to do some kind of membership level, it's not like
I
what
understand,
we're
but,
funding.
but I'm saying, I'm going back to the waiving thing too, because we
Oh,
just said we're gonna cap that waiving thing, so once we cap that, they're gonna be allowed to having to pay us for a parade.
Well, it's
You
a
guys
good
fine
thing,
with that?
it's a good thing for us to consider. I mean, that's fair.
We're taking
That's
that-
fair.
Fair to the citizens?
No, fair for us to to have to consider it. Maybe I said that wrong. For us to think about further.
No, I get what you're saying though. Like,
You
if,
think
if
that
we say
$5,000
we're gonna waive fees for the chamber's parade, then that will eat up the entire $5,000.
$5,000.
I get what you're saying.
No, they're gonna go into debt. They're gonna owe us for waiving them.
Right.
I would think how much is
Well,
spent
yeah,
on
then,
that.
then you
That's
have to
a lot more
decide,
money
is it a
than we-
town event or is it a chamber event? I mean,
it a
is it a chamber Christmas
collaborative
parade
event?
or is it a town Christmas parade?
And then we go into the citizens saying, like, where's our Christmas parade like we did last year? So then we're gonna mock snix that Christmas parade.
I mean,
We better really consider
town
that.
parade, because
Yeah.
we put in a lot
sorry,
of
say it
money
again?
with stuff.
Clete, it's always been
Chamber.
Chamber's
Right.
Christmas parade, not the town's Christmas parade.
They do it for the town.
Right.
But it's not ours.
And that may be a conversation that we should have, because as you said, we do support the parade a lot. And even though we're not putting a price tag on it for the chamber, there is a price tag on it for us. And when we are paying the officers, or paying off-duty officers in public works. So there is a price tag, even though it may not be necessarily in their budget. So that may just be a conversation that we need to have moving forward. Maybe it needs to be a collaboration. I don't know. Just saying.
And so to make it go forward for this year and for this budget, does it need its own line?
What's that?
That's separate, the
Christmas parade?
parade?
I don't feel comfortable with us capping right now. I just don't, because where we're at, we all taunting, planting seed, get the citizens involved, then we're gonna put you on limit. I mean, pretty much, like I said, we did some things here recently that wasn't normal, but it's now, if we want these citizens to be involved and create their nonprofits, giving them opportunities to set them up for success. Yes, they have to raise money. I'm fully aware of that. But we have some that we can help these citizens along the way. I don't see a problem with that. It's their tax dollars. They're asking, you know what I'm saying, if they're okay with that, we vote, come to a consensus, the majority rule, I think we'll be fine.
I think it would be a good idea to have a conversation with the chamber to
Yeah.
see if they're even planning to do, because it's just a conversation that should probably be
So
had.
we don't know, did we say?
Right. Yeah, we need to have a conversation.
Thank you.
And one thing, a couple of things I'll share with the board, and Commissioner Locke's already said this, you're operating under incomplete information. I think it would help you all to understand how much fees have been waived.
Right.
The other thing is, if the nonprofits are following the special event policy, we should be getting stuff 6 months in advance, and so that will give you enough lead time to discuss things. All right, any other questions or comments on the strategic planning grants?
Hearing none, 5-minute break.
couple children.
I know, right?
In here.
I don't know.
A cup of coffee would be, I don't know.
Boy, you hit that thing here, he spaz out.
Yeah, it's not quick.
Reconvene.
Thank you, Mayor. The last bullet point before we close out the budget discussion for tonight is to talk about branding, a little bit of budgeting 101. For those for those funds that are not attached to a capital fund. So a capital fund is a fund that we set up for infrastructure projects that have multiple years. So North Arundel widening is an example. The Beaver Dam Greenway was another example. Unless the funds are in a capital fund, then on June 30th, any unspent funds roll into general fund balance. And if you have projects that are incomplete, you have the opportunity, and typically we come back to you in August, and you have the opportunity to reclaim those funds that rolled into general fund balance and bring them back into the project. So with regard to branding, you've got quite a bit of unspent money in both branding and wayfinding. We will have an update for you on where the consultant is on both the seal, not both, but the seal, the logo, and the tagline. We met with them last week. I feel as though they're in a pretty good position on the seal and they can come back to the community. I feel as though they're in a pretty good position on the tagline as well. The logo needs some more work. So I just wanted to give you an update on that's a project within the current fiscal year. Those funds will roll into general fund balance. You'll have an opportunity to reappropriate those funds as you see fit. And so that was the other bullet point that I wanted to put under programs, even though that's not a program in the fiscal year 24. And with that, unless there's any questions or comments, that concludes our presentation.
I have a question. In the budget line, we talked in the past about an app for the town. Is there anywhere that we kind of like consider that at all?
An app for the town?
Correct.
What I will do when we bring on a communications manager, that is one of the things that I assign to them. But you don't need funds for that. We can cover that. So it's not necessarily a budget item but that's the plan of attack, so to speak.
Thank you.
I'm looking at the cell phone expense again. I know last year I brought up that I thought we were reimbursing employees more than their actual monthly expense for the cell phone, and we passed around some cell phone policies. Could I get a copy of the current cell phone reimbursement policy? Because I see most budgets all have a cell phone reimbursement for one or more staff members.
Yes. So in that line of thought, our next budget work session, your next budget work session is next Thursday. Again, we won't have presentations planned. We welcome additional feedback from you on the goals. You have given us some good feedback, asked for some information that we will bring back to you. If you think of anything else, feel free to email me directly.
Before we go, I didn't quite get, we talked about doing some research on the usage of the parks. What would that look like? I mean,
The usage of the parks?
right, she's supposed to do some research. I think that was
Oh,
the
for
last.
Gill Street?
Well, any park. I don't think
Or
it was
no,
just
for the,
park usage. She's supposed to do like some research and get back with us on that. What would that look like?
I just don't remember. Maybe Sheila's got a better memory than me.
Yeah, I think it was Sheila.
There are a variety of ways that you can do research on that. We will probably do some more informal spot checking over a period of time. A lot of times, that's an effort that you find volunteers, maybe high school students or college students that are needing additional time. That's very common. It could be a service learning project for North Carolina State has one of the best Parks and Rec tourism and management degree programs. And so we could potentially work with service learning effort and task them with that. There are, we don't have the capacity for me to send out staff to just sit there all day routinely. That you could look at doing like some camera systems that might heat activate, show where people are moving and how long that they're typically there. That's just more expensive. So our best route would be to try to coordinate with some local students or some college students that would be interested in taking the effort on for a period of time. It's not something you can do in just a couple of weeks. It's going to take time to really get a good grasp of how the park's being used, what days of the week, because you're going to have to do it every day of the week at different times and not just hit it one time. So it's going to take a lot of time to get that data in. But it's definitely something we can put a plan together and find a way to execute it.
And once that data then, that will give us to assess what would that end result? We will utilize that data to do what?
Well, y'all have told me that you want to understand whether or not you need bathrooms. And I think when you'll be able to get a better idea of how the park is being used so that you can determine if that's a policy change that you want to make.
And we will base it off a high school student out there?
That's very common in statistic gathering to work with students. We could hire a firm if you would like to do that for us.
No, students.
No, I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is to give the citizens a true assessment and we make some informed decisions based off accurate information. That's what I'm asking for. I'm not trying to degrade or take from anybody's capabilities of doing this study. I just want to make sure we're getting correct information and utilize what data that we need.
This is a very common, I mean, this is a project that similar, I did this when I was a student at NC State where we were tasked to go to certain parks and, you know, you tallied, you tracked what people were doing, I mean, it's very common practice to do it that way. It's a cost-effective way to do it. If you want to dig into it and this board chooses not to trust that, then the alternate would be to hire consultants to go in there that you trust more.
It's not about trust. For me, it's just basically like hearing the citizens speak, trying to get them the accurate information so we can make sound, informed decisions. That's it. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Comment or question, over the 40 years I've been going to the parks here in Zebulon, we've had concession stands come and go at the ballparks. Any thoughts on maybe having actual concessions at some of our ballparks for both soccer and baseball, and how we could maybe get civic groups to run that so it actually would be a money-making activity? I know I was in some of the Clayton parks recently, and they almost had a full-service concession stand. All kinds of food, hot coffee, cold drinks, and they were busy.
Yeah. So we've had that over the years. The company we worked with went out of business in 2020 due to COVID. The challenge we have is just the way our programs are dispersed and that we can do it and it would be a way, but I don't know how much overall benefit it's going to give these nonprofits. I think it's going to take a lot of their time. There's a lot of investment that they have to make in buying those products, and there's no guarantee they're necessarily going to sell those products. And so I think we still have a little bit more work to do in building up the use of our park system. I think that's also into, well, like what you saw in the budget, we're trying to transition some of our fields so that we can focus as much as we can in certain areas, and so that then we do have that turnover of more games in the same locations. That would help that be a cost benefit. It's something we'll definitely take a look at again. We just have a little bit of room to grow, in my opinion, to be able to really, truly support an effort like that and be successful at it. And jumping in too early might be take us a step back.
I'm thinking if we can just start off with candy bars and cold drinks at one of the main locations to see how it works out. And not so much the town do it, but maybe a civic organization step up, or an athletic booster group, or something like that.
Yeah.
A great way for the nonprofits there again to make some money. Because I was out there last night at they had the games, we were playing Roseville in baseball, and one of the parents came to me and asked that specific question, saying, why are we using concession stand as a storage instead of actually having concession? Because she was like, I came home from work normally grabbing a hot dog or something for the kid. She was like, we don't have that accessibility. She did. I mean, that was kind of funny you mentioned that.
We do have the storage issue too, but no, I mean, it's something we'll definitely take a look at again.
Any other final comments or questions?
I do think that when we are looking at page B8, which is a governing body budget, that the recommended budget, I'm assuming, that includes the commissioners as well as the mayor?
Yes.
Okay. And so, and that is with, I believe, the clerk at about, what, 46,000 for that, for the 6 months period that would happen between the hire date, or no, wait, that's 7 months. So if we do decide that we are going to increase salaries, you know, like that's the line that we need to pay attention to, guys.
And was staff able to come up with the calculations if we move the salaries with those recommended amounts at the previous meeting? We just threw a number out there for a commissioner and the mayor and said if we were to increase them, are they built into this?
that's-
They're in here. Okay, thank you.
And just before we close out, professional service, that's where the lawyer's fee is at, correct? His legal fees are in there, his
Correct.
budget.
Correct.
So he's asking for 250, so basically we have just 100,000. Where would the other 100,000 go?
That's for the audit, annual audit. I can't remember the other things.
Like we pay-
Those are
Get that
two
list.
biggest things.
Get that list to us, and just to reiterate, I'd like to see a contract. Under materials and supplies, there is 18,400 for FY '23, but then another 18,400 for this year. What will those materials and supplies cover? I know what they did in '23, but what are you planning on for '24? It's on B8, about the halfway down, a little bit lower than halfway.
I can tell you why it increased, because I increased that line item. That would cover the furniture and equipment for the clerk that would be needed, and any of the materials and supplies that the board would need, which would include things like notebooks and all the stuff that we use at your retreats and all of that.
Okay, all right. I just knew what we spent it for this year.
Yes.
And then under the economic development, there's a, let me find it first.
What page you on?
I'm looking for the page, Mayor.
B19, the recommended B19?
It's B19? Oh, okay, yes, thank you. The Downtown Associate Program, which I'm assuming what we mean by that is the Downtown Main Street Program, because it's going to switch names in July, correct?
We're hopeful that it will. I mean, we don't know until they actually announce us, but yes, that's what that means. Is while it's Downtown Associate Program, it will officially change to Main Street Program when we get pulled in.
Okay, good. So there is $7,000 for travel and training. Who is that going towards? Is that just for the Main Street coordinator? Because I would really like some of the board to have the opportunity to go to the Main Street conference. And so I just need to understand where that $7,000 is going to go.
Okay, so I'll say a couple things. We can get you a breakdown on that, but if you all want to do something, you want to go to the Main Street Conference, we'll figure out a way. So you don't necessarily have to worry about how to fund it, but we'll give you the breakdown.
She's talking about the Main Street
I'm sorry,
Board.
talking about the Main Street Board. Not us, not this board,
thought you were
but
talking
the
about
Main
board.
Street,
I'm
the
sorry.
Main Street Board.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, okay, then we need to give you a breakdown on that.
Sorry, I wasn't
No, yeah,
clear
I-
enough. Because I know that we all went and found it to be tremendously helpful, and we were wishing that the board was already in place because they would have been able to really get up to speed very quickly if they had had that opportunity. So if there's any way that, I mean, I don't know what it would look like. Oh, we're going to fund half. We're going to fund, you know, a primary and a secondary person to go. But I do think that some members of the board, if not the entire board, we should send them to that.
It's clear. Thank you.
Okay.
Any other questions, comments from the board?
Probably.
Again, you can always send me an email.
Yeah, I will. Oh, actually, on B2, Bobby, under the revenue summary, we have investment earnings that were like 3,000, 37,000, 3,000, and then our investment earnings are $885,000, leading to a 9,900% increase. Can I understand that a little bit more? Can you help me understand that?
That's, as you've heard, the feds have raised interest rates, like, I think the last 4 or 5 quarters in a row now. So our earnings are increased dramatically from like last year.
So it's really been that much of a difference? Okay, wow.
Yeah.
I'm not complaining, I just didn't realize. And then what is considered miscellaneous revenues?
If you flip over to B6, those are basically just miscellaneous revenues, like a catch-all for anything that might come in. There's a handful. One example is like we get 25 cents per payment for water bill payments we take. When we get that check from Raleigh every month, that goes in there, and just other miscellaneous type things. And the majority of it, the $55,000, is the Wake County ABC distribution that we get quarterly based on ABC distribution, profits from the Wake County ABC board.
And so we're projecting that people are gonna drink less in fiscal year '24?
We try to use conservative numbers. So that, you see it's kind of increased the last couple of years. It's been around, I kind of do like a 3-year average typically when projecting those. So this year was a little bit up. Let's try to go with safe estimates.
Okay.
Any other questions, comments?
Oh, why are we not projecting recreation impact fees for 2024? That's also on B2. And then it's mentioned again further down into the budget, and I just need to understand, like, is there a different way that we're accounting for those?
Well, those are, as we mentioned, restrictive in their nature. So we're kind of banking those, sort of. We're not budgeting them for expenditure yet. And then as we're banking them and holding them in the reserve, when it's decided on what projects are going to be allocated towards, then we'll kind of appropriate them and spend them at that point.
Okay, so it's saying that are estimated, so this is a total amount, 2,100,000, which is 1 point whatever up from the amended budget.
Correct. That's what we've collected this year.
Okay, and so you don't have an idea of how much we're going to collect in the coming fiscal year? I mean, I understand that they have to be dedicated to one area only, but we don't have a projection?
Not an exact projection, but like I said, we're receiving them and banking them, sort of,
No,
and
no, I
then
get
gonna.
that, yeah.
So we're not gonna appropriate any, because you don't want to appropriate something like that for expenditure when we don't have it. I mean, you don't want to appropriate the revenue if you don't have the expenditure that you're going to spend it on yet.
Okay, no, I understand that, but like, you've accounted for it in the past. So can we just make like, okay, we're anticipating this number of COs to happen, and so we're gonna have this much come in as either a transportation or a Parks and Rec impact? Or you don't project that at all?
Well, not if we're not going to use them. You'll see on,
So did we use the $2 million?
no, none of that. We've received about 3 million, I think it is, so far, last year, since January of 22.
Right,
So not quite a year and a half. We've collected about 3 million. Haven't spent any of it yet.
right.
So
I guess I knew that. My point being, so we don't have a way to project what we're going to have so that we could say perhaps, all right, we anticipate having $4 million, so we can endeavor to start thinking about doing this project.
So let me interject, because this will be a conversation for another day. Much like this year, we front-loaded the operation budget in the spring, during the spring at the quarterly reports. For your August, September, and October mini retreats, we're going to work with you all for you all to adopt a capital improvement plan. One of the components of that is a capital improvement plan for parks. And in order for you to adopt a capital improvement plan for parks, you got to get a sense of what do the revenue streams look like from property tax, Parks and Rec, impact fees. And based upon that, you'll decide which of those projects are highest priority, like when do you fund them, what maybe get moved off. And so this request for what does our projected Parks and Rec impact fee revenue look like, I think you'll get that. I think you'll get the answer to your question when we go through those mini retreats this fall, if I'm
Okay.
understanding your question correctly.
Yeah, no, I think that you are. So for right now, that money is just, I'm sorry, did you have something to say since you're standing there?
No, wait.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to add, to answer that question in relating to what Joe just shared, I had already committed to sending the CIP plan that y'all just adopted related to the PARTF, and that included just some estimates of what we thought we might get, but that's all relative on what development actually ends up doing. And we understand that every year you're going to have to reevaluate that. And so what Joe was talking about was bringing that back to you. So when I reshare that plan, you'll kind of see how that recreation impact fee could fall out over the next couple of years.
Okay, cool. Thank
Yeah,
you.
absolutely.
Thanks. I understand now, so thank you. as always, we should think about, and like seriously think about our partnership with PEG Media. And is it continuing to be the most valuable thing and the most valuable way for us to spend $54,000? Because I know that we've been struggling a little bit with them this year. And I don't know what an alternative would look like. But we should think about that. And we should be utilizing them more if we do decide to move forward and fund them another year. We should be putting out all kinds of content. And I think that part of that's going to come with our not PIO, our communications manager. But it's a struggle for me to think that we would continue on the same path with the same level of service for $54,000 without setting some expectations.
I think that's a really, really good project or something for our communication. I think that is a very good top priority for them to take on when they come to like super duper top priority for them to take on. Because I think it's a concern that is warranted or we should look at for sure.
Because we do struggle with how do we get information out to the masses. Well, that's our way that's been terribly underutilized in the past. So
For sure.
just a thought for us to consider. And can we break out the increase in professional services and what that is going to be? Because there's about a $31,000 difference, I'm on B10, between 23 and this coming fiscal year.
Commissioner Baxter, some of the increase in the professional services in the governing board is for the mini retreats that we have with
Okay.
you, where you're going to be, who's going to speak, and, food and all of that. It comes out of that line item as well.
Okay, so that's for the mini retreats, okay.
Yes, ma'am.
With that said, what line item will we do, we're doing a little bit more at the schools and stuff like that, where to give out stuff to kids, I call it little things from Zebulon. Where would we need our own separate line item for that? Because I know I've done a couple, I've seen the mayor, some different things like that.
For what?
I'm asking for like things that go on like the table, display tables, where that.
Oh, like tchotchkes?
Yeah, the chances for kids.
Oh, yeah.
We're doing more of those. Is there somewhere on there we could put that in there, or where would that be?
We would have to add that is not included in this budget, so.
Is there something we can take a look at, add in, Joe? Because I know we're doing more now.
And would that be added to the materials and supplies?
I think we need our own line item for that somewhere, because now, like, I give research myself when I did the one at the middle school.
Yeah.
Trying to figure out to get stuff to kids, I had to come and kind of take from their supplies, which,
That's why my booth was the most popular. I gave out honey.
that was free. But, yeah, just trying to figure out what we can do, because I say I've done one at the high school, did one at the middle school, and they're pulling us more, with the middle school, they're pulling us in more now that we are more active.
Would that be where that would be, the materials and supplies line item? Or you're saying that you want one under the governing body?
Correct, I think we need our own, so we don't take from, I
there
was
is-
chasing down from Park and Rec, Fire, Police. and trying to figure out-
There's one. There's one in governing body.
Yeah,
I would just,
we could just increase it.
yeah. I
What
don't,
is that?
What page
Yeah,
is that?
that's the one it's B8. That's the one that includes the furniture and equipment for the clerk.
The equipment, you said materials, supplies, is it?
Do you see it?
Yeah, it says 18. Added in there, anything was added in the.
No, no,
form,
no,
I don't
she
think.
said that nothing was added in.
Is that where we put it at?
It would be, but I'm not trying to diminish the need for it. It's not a significant amount of money, and I think you would benefit by completing the branding process. If you complete the branding process, then we can get you all kinds of swag and pay out of that account. If we need money, we're not talking about a lot of money. We can do a budget transfer. I mean, if we just like put in $500 or something like that, we could do that, but that's just making a guess.
I would like it in there because I just would like it in there. I mean, that's talking, like I said, I know we're doing it. We're getting required to do more. And I would like to have something. We can discuss it further.
Any other questions? I'm sure we will have more at our next session on 25th. Next, contract approval.
Mayor, and thank you, Board, for adding this as an item to your agenda. The contract in front of you meets the terms of the direction that you gave to staff. It's been signed by the seller, and we have for you a sample motion if you are interested in accepting the agreement. If so, again, we ask you to read the sample motion placed before you.
I move to accept the agreements for the purchase and sale for the improvement of real property by and between the town of Zebulon as buyers and Charles W. Davenport Jr. as seller to acquire the real property located at 200 East Horton Street, Zebulon, North Carolina, 27597-2822. Under the terms and conditions set out in the agreement attached hereto, and authorize the town manager to execute the agreement on behalf of the town and execute such documents and deliver such certificates as is necessary to complete the transaction and acquire the property.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Thank you, Commissioner Baxter. Discussion?
Let's get it done.
A time frame, do we ever-
So that Jessica can move to adjourn.
We can have a roll vote. Commissioner Baxter?
Yes.
Commissioner Miles?
Favor.
Commissioner Clark?
In favor.
You got to stop switching seats,
Commissioner Harrison?
Favor.
Commissioner Laux?
In favor.
Motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there a motion to adjourn? Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor? Adjourn.
I beat you this time, Larry.
Joe, I like this process more.